Think about, when you plot a point on a standard piece of graph paper.
Right, like back in high school geometry.
Exactly. You map out the x-axis, you map out the axis, and there's just this inherent assumption of, well, cold, hard logic.
Right, absolutely. I mean, we use Cartesian coordinates to measure physical space or to chart financial growth.
Some model buildings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a tool that's explicitly designed to contain and define the material world. It gives us this sense of control, really.
Control, right.
Yeah, because the grid gives us a way to just, categorize reality into these neat, visible, entirely measurable quadrants.
But today we are looking at a framework that takes that exact same mundane mathematical grid and uses it to chart the afterlife.
Which is just a wild concept.
It really is. So we're doing a deep dive today into this really fascinating 2006 text by a writer named Xu Feng.
Yeah, it's called Space-Time Tunnel and 20 Parallel Worlds.
Right, and we're working from a translation by Kinyu. And this text basically proposes a completely mathematical map of heaven, hell, ghosts, and demons.
Blending high school geometry with this incredibly intricate spiritual cosmology.
Yeah, and just to be super clear, right up front for you listening, our goal for this deep dive is strictly structural.
Right, we're essentially acting as impartial guides to this really unique map.
Exactly. We are absolutely not endorsing or validating the theological or spiritual viewpoints in the text. We're just analyzing the architecture of the idea itself, how this author actually constructs this massive worldview.
And the foundational pillar of that architecture is a total rejection of the flat plane.
Oh, okay.
The core theory here is that the universe isn't just one layer of existence. It's a massive, interlaced, three-dimensional coordinate system.
Okay, so let's establish the baseline here.
Yeah.
If you have the x-axis running horizontally, right, and the axis running vertically.
It gives you a two-dimensional world.
Right, a flat sheet of paper. But the text proposes that to actually map the spiritual universe, you have to add depth.
You have to drive a z-axis straight through the center of that paper to create a full 3D space.
And the author makes this really significant theoretical leap here. He equates this z-axis to the mathematical concept of the imaginary number.
Right, usually represented by the lowercase letter I in math.
Yeah, exactly, which is wild.
It is. And the text anchors this leap in historical mathematics, actually. It references René Descartes, the 17th century mathematician who originally coined the term imaginary number.
Oh, okay.
But it relies even more heavily on the philosophical perspective of Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz.
Right.
Yeah, at the turn of the 18th century, Leibniz described imaginary numbers in a way that feels almost mystical, honestly. He called them the wonderful and strange hiding places of the gods.
I love that phrase.
Right. He went on to say they're almost amphibious creatures that both exist and do not exist.
Amphibious creatures that both exist and do not exist. Man, that dual nature is so crucial to the author's premise here.
He really is.
Because it's mathematically required to solve equations, right? But it doesn't represent a tangible quantity you can actually hold in your hand. Okay, let's unpack this. Because if this z-axis represents the spiritual realm, why are we so blind to it in our everyday lives? Like, why don't we see it?
That's a million-dollar question, right?
Yeah. And if I can offer an analogy here, think of like a vintage two-dimensional video game, like the original Super Mario.
Oh, yeah, that's a great way to look at it.
Right. So Mario can move left and right on the x-axis, and he can jump up and down on the axis. To him, that flat plane is his entire universe.
That's his whole reality.
Right. If you tried to tell Mario that there is a z-axis that he could theoretically step forward, like out of the screen or backward into the background, it would sound like pure fiction to him.
Because he simply doesn't have the programming to perceive depth.
Exactly. He just doesn't have the hardware for it.
And that perfectly captures the limitation the text describes. Xu Feng actually provides his own really striking visual in the text, the chopstick analogy.
Oh, right, the chopstick. Walk us through that.
Yeah, so imagine you hold a chopstick perfectly perpendicular to your line of sight, pointing straight at your eye right under a light.
Okay.
What do you actually see? You don't see a long wooden stick. You just see a single two-dimensional dot.
Just the tip of the chopstick.
Right. Because of your fixed vantage point, the entirety of that three-dimensional object collapses into a single point in your perception.
Wow. So you completely miss the structure extending away from you.
Exactly.
But that implies a flaw in the observer, right? Not the universe itself. So within the logic of this text, if we are currently stuck in this Mario-like flat view, mistaking the long chopstick for a single dot, what is the mechanism for actually perceiving the z-axis?
Well, the author introduces this concept of the Buddha eye.
The Buddha eye. Okay.
Yeah. Our standard human perception is calibrated only for material reality, just that top-down view of the blueprint.
Right.
But the text argues that when one looks with the Buddha eye, they can synthesize the hidden dimensions. The imaginary axis is quite literally right in front of us,
Passing right through the origin point.
passing directly through the origin point of our universe.
What?
But it remains invisible because it's overlaid onto the material points we can actually perceive.
Oh, I see.
The author compares it to a soul inside a physical body. They occupy the exact same space, but you only see the physical shell.
Man, that dual occupancy is where the geometry gets incredibly dense. Because once you establish this 3D grid with the X, Y, and Z axes, and then you factor in, positive and negative directions for both space and time,
Right.
the author claims you don't just end up with infinite chaotic dimensions.
No, not at all.
You end up with a totally closed system.
Precisely. The text dictates that when you interlace positive and negative space and time across all three of those axes, it generates exactly 20 mathematical quadrants.
20 parallel worlds.
Well, the author actually refines that terminology a bit. He notes they aren't truly parallel because they all intersect at the origin.
Oh, right, because they share the 0 point.
Exactly. So instead, he defines them as 20 collective worlds existing concurrently.
Okay, so let's break down how he populates these quadrants, because it is essentially a taxonomy of the afterlife, right? Just mapped onto Cartesian coordinates.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
So the author places humanity in the Jock's world. That is our positive two-dimensional plane.
Right.
But then the map descends into negative coordinates. The realm of ghosts is located in the negative x, negative y world.
The XY world, yes.
So my question is, why does negative space correlate with ghosts? What makes a negative coordinate inherently spectral?
Well, within this specific framework, positive coordinates represent expansion, light, and forward-moving time.
Basically, the attributes of life as we understand it.
Exactly. So negative coordinates represent the inverse of that. Contraction, darkness, and reverse or stagnant time.
Okay, wow.
So a ghost inhabiting the XY world is existing in a purely negative two-dimensional space. Their reality is structurally inverted compared to ours.
That actually tracks logically within the system. And if you take that spectral flatland, right, and add a negative z-axis, you drop into the XYZ's world.
Which is a completely negative three-dimensional space.
Right, which the text identifies as the realm of demons.
Yes. The addition of that negative depth, that inverse spiritual dimension, creates a space of total structural contraction.
But then if we look at the complete opposite end of the spectrum, the purely positive realm of gods and Buddhas, what the author calls the Celestial Islands continent, that's located in the Xyz world.
Right. Purely positive space, forward time, full three-dimensional depth.
And the text also maps out a few transitional spaces too, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. There's the 1,000-year world in the XIZ quadrant where only the spiritual depth is negative.
Okay.
And then the 10,000-year world in the XIZ's quadrant, which mixes negative surface reality with positive spiritual depth.
It's just so intricate.
What's fascinating here is how the text appropriates scientific concepts to validate this spiritual map.
How do you mean?
Well, the author points to the scientific concept of antimatter, or the non-material world, right? And equates it directly with these 19 other collective worlds. Yeah. To the author, anything outside of the human axis quadrant is simply the non-material universe. Science calls it dark matter or empty space, but this cosmology calls it the realms of ghosts, gods, and demons.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though. If we share the same coordinate system, and these 19 other worlds are occupying the same overarching universe right now, we're back to that Mario analogy.
Right.
Why don't we just, bump into them? If the realm of demons is literally just a few mathematical coordinates over, what physically prevents a human from perceiving them?
The author attributes this entirely to the severe limitations of our biological hardware.
Our hardware, okay.
Yeah, our five senses, vision, hearing, taste, smell, and touch, are exclusively evolved for the positive ICSI world. We simply lack the biological receptors to process negative coordinates, or the z-axis.
So we're just totally blind to it.
Basically. The text argues that our spiritual sense is essentially dormant. However, The author insists that if a person elevates their thinking and opens that spiritual sense, they will realize that what appears empty to us is actually dense with structure.
Oh, interesting.
The text uses that famous Buddhist tenet to explain this emptiness is form.
Emptiness is form, meaning the empty space in the room with you right now isn't truly empty.
Exactly.
It's just filled with architecture from the XY or XZ worlds that your eyes literally can't render.
Exactly that. We are totally blind to the traffic in the other lanes.
Which brings us to the actual mechanics of travel, because if this massive 20-quadrant map is bustling with unseen traffic, how does a soul navigate it?
Right. How do you get from one lane to another?
Yeah, and the text outlines this really dense network of cosmic transit, right?
Yeah.
Time tunnels and space tunnels.
And they operate under very rigid geometric rules.
They really do.
According to the text, time tunnels consist of both positive and negative time, and they operate exclusively on a vertical axis.
Vertical time, okay, got it.
So if you are traversing time moving to the past or the future, you are moving vertically.
And what about space tunnels?
Space tunnels are the channels connecting the 36 dimensions of space defined in the text, and these tunnels are strictly horizontal.
Okay, so following that logic, if I am a soul in the human plane, and my goal is to reach the heavenly Pisces world.
The Celestial Islands continent.
Right. I should just be able to locate a horizontal space tunnel, step onto the z-axis, and essentially walk straight into the next quadrant. It seems like it should just be a direct parallel step, right?
You definitely think so, but
Yeah.
no. The author introduces a strict metaphysical firewall that prevents that kind of direct lateral movement. You cannot bypass point O.
Point O, the origin point of the coordinate system, 0, 0, 0.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, point O is the structural linchpin of this entire cosmology. The author refers to point O as the zero world, or the Qinglanji.
Qinglanji,
Yeah.
translating roughly to a realm of pure coolness, clarity, or ultimate tranquility.
Yes, a state of absolute unburdened stillness, right at the center of all the geometric chaos.
Wow.
And this is vital, because the text states that the greatest creator resides in the Qinglanji.
Oh, I see.
Because every single axis, X, Y, and Z, positive and negative, must intersect at that exact origin point. The greatest creator inherently exists within all 20 collective worlds simultaneously.
Ah, so it's the ultimate junction box for reality.
Exactly. The text lays down this unbreakable rule. Without passing through the greatest creator at point O, you cannot reach any other space.
No shortcuts.
None. If you try to travel without going through that origin point, you will just end up running in circles within your own specific quadrant. That the geometry simply doesn't allow for it.
So you are basically trapped in a loop in the Yangtze plane unless you gain clearance at the center.
Right.
It makes mechanical sense within the rigid logic of the framework. I'll give it that. So we have the map, we have the vertical and horizontal tunnels, and we have the origin point acting as the gatekeeper.
The cosmic transit hub.
Exactly. But how does this abstract geometry actually translate into a real-world directive? Like, what is the author's call to action for the reader?
Well, this is where the text transitions from, theoretical mapping to a highly specific spiritual mission.
Right.
The author, So Feng, introduces an organization or concept called Lifechanyuan. He basically positions himself as a spiritual tour guide.
Leading his followers, right.
Yes, who are referred to as Chanyuan Celestials, or, interestingly, Chanyuan grass.
Chanyuan grass. I mean, that is a very specific metaphor. It implies something grounded, growing collectively, bending with the wind rather than resisting it.
It's a posture of humility.
Yeah, exactly.
It is a deliberate image of collective spiritual cultivation. And the stated goal of Lifechanyuan is to guide this grass to one specific destination, the Yaz's world.
The purely positive Celestial Islands continent.
Right. They aren't aiming for the 1,000-year world or any of those transitional spaces. They are aiming for the absolute geometric peak of the positive coordinates.
So what does this all mean in practice? How does a person actually buy a ticket for this multidimensional transit system?
It's not easy.
I assume the author isn't suggesting you just, stand in an empty field and wait for a horizontal space tunnel to manifest.
No. The mechanics of initiating this travel require intense intellectual and spiritual labor. The text outlines a really strict curriculum.
A curriculum, yeah.
To make the journey, one must actively participate in Lifechanyuan and achieve a comprehensive understanding of two specific bodies of work, the Chanyuan corpus and the Shufeng corpus.
So it's basically a required reading list for cosmic ascension.
Essentially, yes. The core requirement is mastering what the author calls the 8 levels of thinking and the 8 mysteries of life.
Okay.
The text totally uncompromising on this. Every single condition is indispensable. You cannot hack the geometry, you have to do the reading.
But let's assume someone does the reading. They master the 8 levels of thinking, they integrate the 8 mysteries, and they fully cleared for travel to the Axes world. The physics of the trip described in the text are incredibly counterintuitive.
They are. And this raises an important question about the structural rules the author established earlier.
Right.
The text presents a fascinating paradox regarding the journey from the human Xe world to the heavenly Xe world.
Because of how it defines the movement.
Yes, it defines this movement as traveling into the future, which makes it a parallel movement. And because it is parallel, the primary mode of transit relies on those horizontal space tunnels.
Right. Space tunnels are strictly horizontal. We established that.
However, the author introduces a mechanical caveat here. Even though it is a parallel movement through space, the actual act of traveling is a process.
Okay.
And wherever there is a process, no matter how instantaneous it might seem, there's a passage of time.
Right, that makes sense.
Therefore, to complete the journey across the horizontal space tunnel, the traveler must also briefly enter a time tunnel.
Wait, but the text explicitly stated earlier that time tunnels are strictly vertical.
It did.
So how does that work?
Well, to resolve this paradox of parallel travel, the text describes the traveler entering a brief time tunnel that exists in horizontal time.
A horizontal time tunnel.
Yes.
I mean, the framework introduces this completely rigid geometric rule. Time is vertical, only to deliberately subvert it to accommodate the physics of the journey.
It's a huge shift.
It implies that the sheer force of moving toward the Celestial Islands continent literally bends the orientation of time itself. That is a wild structural concession.
It really is. And the way the text resolves when this travel actually happens is quite a twist, too.
Yeah. When does a celestial physically enter these tunnels?
The author reveals that the journey does not happen after death or in some, distant future event. He states that from the exact moment someone truly becomes a Chanyuan celestial and aligns with the curriculum, they have already entered the space tunnel.
Wait, really? So their physical body is still sitting here in the mundane Kisi world,
Yep.
commuting to work, eating dinner, totally subject to the normal limits of biology. But their spiritual body has already detached and is actively navigating the horizontal space tunnels with the guide.
Yes. The text literally declares, we have already set off. It creates this state of dual existence.
Oh, wow.
The individual remains anchored in the material plane while simultaneously traversing the mathematical geometry of the universe toward the Lazy's quadrant.
It completely recontextualizes the mundane human experience. You aren't just waiting in a holding pattern, Your spirit is already in transit.
It's a very proactive theology.
It really is. As we wrap up this deep dive, let's just step back and look at the sheer scale of the architecture we've explored today.
It's massive.
It really is. The source material takes the cold, rigid rules of 3D Cartesian, coordinates the X, Y, and Z axes, the properties of imaginary numbers, the interplay of positive and negative space.
Right.
And it uses them to construct a meticulously ordered spiritual universe. It is a map where demons and gods aren't just myths, but specific mathematical quadrants, all anchored by a greatest creator at the 0-point origin.
It is a remarkable synthesis, honestly. The text leverages the precise, verifiable language of mathematics to articulate the invisible, ineffable mechanics of the soul.
It's an incredible structural achievement, regardless of your personal beliefs. And before we close, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building on that strange anomaly of the horizontal time tunnel.
Oh, the paradox.
Yeah, the paradox. We established that time is supposed to be vertical, right? But the act of parallel spiritual travel forces it to become horizontal.
Yeah.
Well, if time possesses a hidden horizontality that our human biology fundamentally cannot perceive, it makes you wonder about the mechanics of our own everyday insights.
What do you mean?
Is it possible that every time you learn something profoundly new, or every time you radically shift your perspective, perhaps even just by exploring a deep dive like this one,
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
you weren't just acquiring data? Maybe you were actually moving along a hidden Z-axis. Perhaps, without even realizing it, you are already inhabiting a slightly different mathematical quadrant of reality than you were 15 minutes ago. You just haven't fully opened your spiritual sense enough yet to see the new architecture around you.
That's a powerful thought.
So the next time you look at a simple, flat piece of graph paper, just remember, you might only be seeing the tip of the chopstick.
A very compelling reminder that our vantage point is rarely the whole picture.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the 20 parallel worlds. Keep questioning your coordinates, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.